Ta-da! Hot sauce. Hey you guys, it is hot outside and we have a boatload of peppers coming in, and my favorite way to preserve the pepper harvest, especially when it's hot and I don't necessarily want to do a whole lot of canning, although that's on my agenda at some point, is to ferment and make some hot sauce. So I thought I would go through my process today and show you guys what I do. We've been doing this for a few years now, so let's get some of the disclaimers out of the way. We do not make this to sell. This is for gifts, is what we use it for, and ourselves. We use the dickens out of hot sauce. If you are interested in making this commercially, you're not going to do it the way I'm going to do it right now. Just so you know. But y'all, fermenting does not have to be scary. It is one of the oldest methods of preservation. So you can see the final result. This is what we're aiming for today. Here, leaning forward. Ta-da! Hot sauce. This is what I give as gifts. This one is a 5-ounce bottle. I make little tags that have space for my heat levels and batch numbers and Best Buy and that sort of stuff. I print these out on waterproof stickers. It makes them last a lot longer, makes a nice product. Obviously, we've used half of this. This, my friends, is the last bottle from last year. So this year I'm actually upping production. That's the final product that we're going to aim for. Let me go put this in the fridge. The intermediate step is this. This is what we're going to end up with today. So what you will need if you want to play along is a jar. They obviously ball jars are my favorite. This is a 1/2 gallon. You could very easily do this in a quart if you want to just get started. I use wide mouth because the little fermentation kit that I have gotten fits wide mouth. I can link below what I use. I far prefer these airlocks. The little kit I have comes with a weight to keep the stuff submerged, the lid with the little hole that fits your airlock. But you can just as easily use one of these, which is just a silicone lid. And I will talk about how these work a little bit later on. But first, I'm going to show you my recipe for today, which I use the term recipe loosely. What I love about fermenting these hot sauces is I use what comes out of the garden. And that's what I make my hot sauce with, which means sometimes you have hotter ones, sometimes you have milder ones. I do record everything I've done. So if I, really, really have a good one, I can try and replicate it. But honestly, for me, the beauty of this process is that you can simply use the little pile of peppers that you got out of the garden that day, and you will end up with something delicious, and it's kind of fun to see what you're going to get. The players. First of all, I wear gloves. I can handle jalapenos. And that's as hot as I can go without wearing gloves. I hate gloves. Hate this feeling. Hate it. But worth it. Totally worth it. I want to be able to touch my eyeballs later on today. So gloves. You also need a scale if you're going to play along. You need something to write with and something to write on. I do this. I have little mailing labels. And these mailing labels I just keep in my book, my giant book of ferments. If you're really cool like me, you have a Dalek on it. If you're not as cool as I am, it's okay. Still be friends. Get whatever book works. He's going to come back to play when we unjar that guy, so I'm going to set him aside. But on these mailing labels, I'm going to write down what I put in this jar as I add it. We do everything by weight because it's just easier that way. I have never used anything but fresh peppers because that's the whole reason I do this, is to use up my fresh peppers. However, if you really, really Want to just chuck a whole bunch of peppers in the freezer and do this later on, totally fine. However, to get the most active, the best ferment, you're gonna wanna use some fresh stuff, because I know this sounds a little gross. The microorganisms that are going to ferment, the yeasts and such that are gonna make this process happen, are inherent on fresh vegetables. If you've frozen them or dried them, you'll still get lovely tastes. It'll work out fine, but you won't have that active yeast. And so you've got to add it with other stuff. So there's that. So I use fresh. So today I have Anaheims. Yes. I have a couple red jalapenos. Not for any other reason really other than I want to try and keep this sauce a glorious orangish red color. So Anaheims have a little bit of heat, not a ton. Jalapenos a little bit more. There's those. And then we have the big daddies. These are 2 ghost peppers. So those are going to add a ton of heat. I have some habaneros. I actually have a whole lot more of these coming out of the garden, but I'm going to make another sauce in a couple of days where I use some peaches. Do some peach habanero, because that sounds delicious. Those are the hot boys. Those are the hot boys. Let's talk about the sweet boys, because I don't love all heat all the time. I have a collection of just bells that came out of the garden. This guy has a little bit of damage, but it's cool. We can cut that out. These little guys are all just some lunchbox peppers. So those are some little sweet dudes. Actually, he's a tiny Anaheim. Get back over there. These 2 are lunchbox peppers, or as I much prefer to call them, yum yums. He's got a spot too. That's why he's going in the sauce. And then a couple but a couple different things. I have a couple red beets. I've never added these to a hot sauce before. I watched a video where a guy who makes hot sauces for a living added some beets for color, because I have always loved the color that red beets add. Obviously these are like the outsides have dried off, but of course the insides are going to be a glorious pinky red, and beets are very, very high in some natural sugars. So I'm hoping it'll lend some sweetness as well. That will be fun to try. I'm looking forward to that. And finally, garlic. I'm going to cut up all those cloves and add to my jar. Now I'll be honest, even though that looks like a lot, I suspect this might actually not be quite enough to fill my jar. So I will let y'all know if I've got to come back and add more to it. All right, so you guys saw our players, set them aside, and now I'm just gonna get to chopping. I actually don't keep the seeds necessarily from the sweet peppers because they tend to be more bitter, but I do keep the seeds from the hot peppers because they lend some lovely heat. Now, I don't know how well you guys can see this. I think you can see all right. I really rough chop. I'm gonna tear out my jar so that the weight of the jar doesn't get calculated, and then I'm going to add my Anaheims first. And I do this by ingredient. I have not found that it matters if all the stuff is not perfectly mixed up in the jar, but I do it by ingredient so that I can write down the weights of each specific ingredient as I go. All right, if I were smarter, I would have a dedicated hot sauce pen, but I don't. I just use a pen that I grab, which means the next person who picks them up might get zinged a little bit. Probably going to be me, so it doesn't matter. All right, these labels that I alluded to earlier, here's what I do with them. I added 5 ounces of Anaheims. So I'm going to write that on my label. 5 ounces of Anaheim. And that's how I'm going to keep track of what's in here. And then, hello, I stick it on the jar like that. All right, tear out the Anaheims, and I'm going to keep on going and keep on keeping on. That was fun, right? Couple things. Thing one, I did add the garlic in here. I chopped up a whole head or a whole bulb of garlic, and I wasn't too precious about getting all the paper off. Garlic, the skin's totally edible. It's just not very nice to eat, but in a ferment, throw it in there. It's fine. So that's thing one, throw the skin in there. I do not, and I might get a little bit of shade for this, I don't throw the tops in. That green I just don't love it. Also, that's where a lot of the damage on my peppers tends to come in, which, speaking of damage, we've had very bad bug pressure this year. This year has been one of the hardest growing seasons I've ever experienced. Whenever you see a tiny little hole in the side of your pepper, chances are you're gonna find a little critter inside, and I found a couple. Whether or not you use those is up to you. The beauty of this process is you can use damaged or blemished or whatever and just cut that bit out, and it's okay. The other thing I wanted to mention just about my process, because I don't know, I feel like I need to say these things. I do use a flexible mat because look at that, y'all. Love that. So obviously I do not have quite enough to fill my thing, and I'm gonna just find some more peppers floating around here to fill this up the rest of the way, and then I'll see you when we're ready to put the brine in. So I have this puppy all full. I did find a couple more green jalapenos, and I found one more red bell pepper, which I actually didn't use all of, to fill the top. And I wrote all that down on this. So there's my tag. And yes, I'm hanging over top of it. Maybe I shouldn't because my hair is down. Now, when it comes to the brine that you add into this, I have read that anywhere from like 2.5 to 5 is a perfectly acceptable brine ratio. I like to cheat up a little bit for 2 reasons. One, because I like salt. I'll be honest. I like my final hot sauces to have a little bit of saltiness. But also, like I mentioned earlier, it stays kind of warm in our little house. And these are very fresh peppers, both of which are going to lead to a very fast ferment. And the brine is actually going to help slow it down a little bit and retard the growth of any nasties. Because anytime you're talking about fermenting, you're talking about kind of a
battle royale, if you will, between the microorganisms that you want, the yeast, and the symbiotic yeast and bacteria that are going to create that nice lactic acid. Lactic acid is what we're making in here, and so it's like a race, right, between the good critters that are going to form that lovely lactic acid and break stuff down and keep it safe, and the microorganisms that would make you sick, right? And so the brine's job, for the most part, is going to be to support the good guys and not let the bad guys grow too much. And we'll talk a little bit more about that actually when I unjar that, guys, because you're still going to get the growth of some stuff sometimes. So that's that.
All right, so I'm gonna make up my brine, and again, I do this by weight. And I wasn't ready. But if you have a weird shaped vessel or a weird size vessel, or are doing this for the first time, you can, at this point, fill this up with water, and then pour your water out, like through a sieve or through your hand, into a vessel to figure out the weight of the water that you have. This is going to be 800 milliliters of water, which is 800 grams. This salt, you don't want to use iodized salt. So just regular table salt is not going to cut it. A lot of people like to use kosher salt. Totally fine. I just don't have a lot of this. So today I'm using this stuff, this sea salt, and any old sea salt will work just fine. You want to avoid anything that's got additives. Between me and you, David is standing just off camera and is being super distracting. We're just hulking in the dark hallway. So again, I've got 800 grams, give or take a little bit, of water, and so now I'm going to add 3.5% salt. Now, here's how I do this calculation. Hey Siri, what is 3.5% of 800? 28. 28 grams salt to make my 3.5% brine. Or 30 grams, as the case may be. Oh, it's okay. Totally okay. All right, let me stir him up. And I really want to make sure I'm not leaving any salt. I don't know how loud that is to you guys. Probably a little obnoxious, maybe. I'm going to pour him in. Oh, I'm going to need a little more. You can see it came up almost all the way to the top, but there's lots of air bubbles. And so as I start to jiggle to let that water flow into all the cavities, you'll see the water level actually go down a little bit. So let's do 400 grams of water, which means I'm going to need another 14 grams of salt. And we're going to make sure our brine covers up our veggies all the way. All the way, May. So now that our veggies are completely covered, here's where this guy comes in. He is washed. He was sanitized actually before I put him away. Every time I wash these, I dunk them in a little bit of bleach solution to make sure that they are super clean. But what this weight's going to do is it's going to help keep all those peppers submerged underneath the brine level. And if it can be submerged by a full inch, then the better. And that brine is going to be hot already, I can tell you that. All right, I'm going to jiggle it just a little bit to try and get all those air pockets out. And then, because I'm a little extra, I'm actually going to spoon off some of these seeds that have escaped because they'll mold. Our goal in this step, exactly like with the sauerkraut or any ferment needs to take place in an anaerobic environment, right? Like no oxygen is the goal. So anything that is exposed to oxygen stands a much greater chance of actually spoiling as opposed to fermenting. And that could be mold or growing bacteria that you don't like. So any of these little seeds that have made their way up, I like to just scoop them off. So that's pretty much ready. So I'm going to put him in. And now I'm going to put the airlock. The purpose of an airlock is to allow the gases that are created during fermentation, mostly carbon dioxide, allow that to escape so you don't blow things up, but not allow oxygen in. So this guy that I showed you guys earlier does that. This has got a little slit in that silicone lid that when it's under pressure can burp the jar and allow the carbon dioxide out. This guy doesn't keep out grossness as effectively as this. But I'll be honest, when you're just starting out, you could just every now and then open up your jar to let those gases escape real quick, and that would be just as effective. That would work too. Now, the other way in which I'm a little extra is I actually like to make up a little brine solution to pour in this airlock. And when you get them, they've got instructions. This guy has a little fill line right here that you probably can't see. But this brine will ensure that if there is any dust or anything floating around and that does land in there, that I don't end up growing anything gross. So this little guy goes there, and then I'm going to fill this up to the fill line. Done. Put this lid on to keep out dust and things, and now he is ready to ferment. Let me clean up this mess, and then let me pull out the stuff that's ready to jar. We'll talk about that. Go team. Ready? Y'all in? Go. Hi. Oh, y'all want, let me fix you. Editing, Becky. That's still crooked. Do something about that, will you? Please, thank you. Welcome back. This is the first sauce that I started this season. Did I turn this on? Yeah, I did. Look at me being on top of things. Go, Becky. Take our attention to him. I'm going to pull out the that thing. And then let's open her up and see what we got in here. Oh, he's actually quite lovely. Hello, other camera. This is what we're looking at. Yes. This actually looks really good. There's no sign of mold, really, but mold still wouldn't be a problem. Mold is not a deal breaker. In fact, this is a good time to show you guys my book. See, Delix. Last year, the second batch. So my ferment 222 started. I didn't start that one until September. I was behind the game last year. It only fermented for 2 weeks. And then I pulled it on that date and it had mold growing and I removed it. No biggie. So long as you're not, and I always have to Google it, but I know pink is not okay. That's a no-go. If you can see the hypha of the mold, like the long stringy tails of the mold growing deep into your sauce, I might chuck it. But if you can pretty easily and pretty quickly skim off the mold from the top of your ferment and discard it, and maybe even the first inch, like I tend to, just because it makes me feel kind of gross, then it's totally fine. But this book is actually where I record what I did and how I did it. And so this is actually the sticker that was on the side of the jar, and I peel it off the side of the jar and I stick it in there. So that's what I'll do with this guy. So that's set that aside. So this guy. So even though a lot of this stuff actually, a lot of these peppers actually rose above the weight, which is in here somewhere. Oh yeah, there it is. See it? None of it molded, and this is all looking good. All right, so now that I know that he's pretty good. I actually use tongs to get in here and get these glass weights out, which, by the way, the weights that I suggest and the ones that I think I'll have linked on Amazon have these little like handles on them. Either this kind, or I've got a couple that have like little knobs on them. So much easier. So here we are. We have our ferment. It should smell sour. It should smell a little funky and have that acidic smell to it. This guy, by the way, if you can see, all he had in him, I'm actually going to go ahead and peel this off now. He had green bell peppers, green Anaheims, they weren't red yet, and some green jalapenos. So I'm going to call him Green Monster. He's going to be a nice mild sauce that I think will be lovely. Not everybody in my family likes really, really hot stuff. I remove the brine in order to process this, and I will add brine back in according to taste. So for now, I'm just going to dump him, and you guys can see like that cam yeast. I believe that's what it's called. This next part, I'm not going to actually blend him on camera, one, because it's obnoxious, and two, I actually have to plug it in over there. But I have a Vitamix, and here's why it's important that I'm telling you that it's a Vitamix. Because Vitamixes, as well as some other very high-powered blenders on the market, actually blend your food using pretty much pure power. The blades are not crazy sharp. This sucker, though, just has a lot of power. And why that's important is because with that power comes friction, and with that friction comes heat. It generates enough heat that if you do it long enough, if you puree these long enough within this blender, it will get up to pasteurization and temperatures in order to stop the ferment. Now hear me, just so that I would be absolutely clear. Come closer. It will not 100% pasteurize this hot sauce, and I do not tell people that it is pasteurized, but what it does do is it gets it hot enough for long enough to stop the fermentation process, and that's what I'm looking for in these, because I'm going to stick them in little bottles. I'm going to stick them in little bottles, and while this is almost completely done fermenting, I think if there's any more fermentation that's happening, that carbon dioxide, the gases we talked about earlier, are going to build up in this little bottle and can totally poof, when you open it up, and I don't want that to happen. So I heat this up with the blender in order to stop fermentation. If you do not have a blender that can bring the temperature of your mixture up high enough to do that, pop it on the stove. Totally fine. Or just put it in jars that you can pretty easily burp here and there, especially if you just want to try this to make enough for yourself. Stick it in the fridge, which slows the fermentation way down, way down, and burp it every now and then so that it doesn't explode on you. All right, so I'm going to dump this into my blender. I'm going to take it over there. I'm going to blend it and blend it and blend it for a while. It takes quite a few minutes to get it up to temperature. And then I'm going to bring it back here to talk to you guys about what else I add to this. Groovy, groovy. This is not quite done yet, although it's very warm. I did double check my notes from last year, and I do heat it up to 160. So it's right now it's about at 110, I think. By the way, these thermometers are not over expensive. So handy. Love them. Anyway, so it's a little bit actually over 100. So I've got more blending to do, but I wanted to, while I was thinking about it, I wanted to show you like midway and also tell you what I have added to this. So you saw me drain the peppers. You saw me set the brine aside. After I blended the peppers up a little bit, it's way too thick for hot sauce. If you wanted it as like a paste for something, perfect. So this is totally a choose your own adventure. But after blending it up a little bit, I needed some more liquid. So I added about a cup of the brine back into it and blended that up good. I also added about a cup of apple cider, not even about, exactly a cup of apple cider vinegar. You could use white vinegar if you wanted that cleaner taste, but basically adding some more acid in here to help its preservation. Like I said, this is lactic acid. We're going to add some acetic acid in the form of vinegar. It also lends a nice flavor. So I added that and blended it up. And finally, this is totally optional, is xanthan gum. So this, I think I got this on Amazon probably years ago, actually. It's a completely natural product, so don't feel gross about adding it. This is an emulsifier, and what that means is it's going to make sure that the liquid bits and the solid bits of your sauce stay in suspension so that you don't get a hot sauce that eventually separates. It's fine, just shake it up and use it. Totally fine. But the xanthan gum, I only add a half a teaspoon to this. It's only that much in this whole thing, and it is amazing how much it helps. One, sort of thicken it up, but also helps keep it that consistency. So that's where we're at. I'm going to go finish blending him up to 160 and then check back in with you guys in a moment.
Oh, so gross. More. Oh, steamy. There you are. Nice.
We're back. He's blended. He is hot. Look, watch. Steamy. Isn't that crazy? Like, never knew about that particular function of these. And then I found out later that there are some chefs who like cook their soups in a Vitamix. That's a whole different video. After he hits 160, and you saw me actually stick the probe in and check him, I actually blend it for another 20 seconds or so to be sure that all parts of this have hit. That for gifts, I have purchased these bottles from Amazon. Again, I can link below. I have done both the 3 ounces and the 5 ounces. So I will jar it up in both. These little glass woozy bottles. I like these because they come with what I lovingly refer to as the buttholes. I don't know if that's in focus at all or not, but you guys know the little thing that makes it not all come out at once. Comes with those, which I appreciate. So I'm going to jar these up. I actually haven't created the labels yet. By the time I edit this video, I'm hoping I will, and we'll be able to flash a picture up of the new Lloydstead Hot Sauce 2023 edition labels, because you know, I think people get a kick out of that. So I'm going to pour all this in my jars and then follow up with you guys when I'm done with that. I don't think I forgot anything. I've got all these jars, which I'm actually going to leave sitting on my counter for a little while because they're still pretty gosh darn hot. So I've tasted this just now. I had a couple times throughout the process. The best flavor is going to develop over the next couple weeks. I am so glad you guys hung out with me today. I hope you enjoyed hanging out in my kitchen while it's blazing hot outside. I promise we're going to be back out in the garden soon. I know I haven't been posting as regularly as I would like, but life, man, life. Thanks for hanging, and I will see you guys soon. Bye. Oh man, I gotta go down and get more. Going to the cellar, gonna eat a lot of peaches. But there aren't peaches in the cellar. I'm just getting some salt, yeah. Going down the steps, I'm gonna eat me a lot of peaches. Getting my bucket of salt, yeah.